is the month of April we're moving into, so I did want to kind of switch gears a little bit. Our morning class, I do tend to add a little bit more movement, just fluidity. It is the beginning of the day, so it's nice to kind of get that gentle awareness with our breath and our body to kind of take us into our day. So I'll stick with a little bit of that still, but I think we're going to approach it from a supine position today. So this will involve some gentle hip stuff that we can use, stuff for our back, and a little bit more focus across the front of the hips, hip flexors and quadriceps, so that can help as well. And then at the end of class, I'll still save time to do our pranayama work. I'm going to have us go back to Nadi Shodhanam, alternate nostril breathing, but we're going to gradually add on a little bit of Rachaka and Paraka. It's breath retention inwardly or externally, not right away, but over a few classes. So it's just a little bit more advanced version of that pranayama. And I did want to introduce the Om Purnamada mantra, but we can do that at the end of class. So those of you that would want to stay for a few more minutes at the end of class, once we've wrapped things up, we can kind of go back and forth and kind of learn that mantra together. Not obligatory, but that will be the one that I'll be. What was the adjective you just used? Gradually. I like that. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for being here. As usual, just mind your practice. Give yourself options throughout your practice. Anything that I say is just a suggestion, and nobody knows your body better than you do. So our yoga practice reinforces that. We're going to move on to our mats. I am going to have us start in a supine position and with a little bit of elevation for the upper back or underneath the legs. So you'll probably want to bolster a pillow or blanket. And I know you all know your practice and bodies really well. So if there's any other variation you want to take, by all means, go for it. I'll show you what I'll be doing. It'll involve a pillow and our folded blanket. We have done this one in the past. So give me a moment to waddle over here. So I'll be placing this blanket towards the bottom of my mat to support my lower legs behind my knees. You could always take this up a little higher. If you had a couple blankets, you could put some yoga blocks underneath here and make a little bench. If you have a bolster, it works a little bit easier because the bolster is a little more stiff. And then for the blanket, making that longer rectangular fold that will run the length from your low back, upper back, and support the head. Now this is a pretty wide fold. If I wanted to get even a little bit more crazy this morning, I could probably take this long rectangle and just fold it one more time. So I have a skinnier, slightly thicker fold. So this is going to track closer to my spine so that my shoulders will have more ability to fall off the edges of it. Once we get into this position, cactusing those arms, allowing the backs of the hands to fall towards the ground. And that'll give us that big heart opening stretch. And we'll take that towards the front of our mat. You'll notice you'll have extra length over, well, some of us will, depending on the length of our blanket. But then that can be used, if needed, as a little extra support for the back of the head. I don't think I'll need that, but we'll see. Now we don't need to pull the short end of the blanket all the way up into the low back. We might want to leave a little bit of space. My low back is a little extra stiff today. So I'm going to let it sink a little further towards the ground, bringing those legs over my support. We want it to come a little lower. We'll stretch those legs out. They can be hovering there. If they're a little higher up, that's okay. We'd like the feet to be a little lower than the knees unless you're elevating and putting them at more of an inversion. Back of the head should be supported, bending at those elbows, and then allowing gravity to be our friend. When the backs of the hands fall back towards the ground, and we'll probably all feel the stretch across the front of the heart and the chest. So once we start to move into our position, take another moment to loosen things up, to readjust any props you might be using. Find the very back center of the skull, poof, the cheeks, all that good stuff. Allow the eyes to close so that we recenter, redirect our attention and awareness inward, letting go of any outside distractions, any outside to-do lists, and giving ourselves that gift of being present for the next hour and so. Start to mentally move through the body from the top of the head all the way up and down into the fingertips and toes. Softening, relaxing, letting go of any tension we might find. Relax the face. Feel the heaviness of the limbs through the arms and the legs. Recognize and honor any areas you might be healing this morning. And feel the whole body settle in for our practice this morning within the four corners of our mat. And now let's spread this awareness to the rhythm of our breath. Simply observing and watching the inhalations and exhalations. Let the flow of that breath move as evenly and smoothly as possible in and out through the nose. Maybe we notice a subtle rise and fall of the belly with the breath. And maybe we notice the flow of breath around the nostrils, left to right, the tip of the nose. And this morning, let's try to move that breath like a wave in and out of the body. As we breathe in, the abdomen expands. We continue to fill the body up around the torso, the chest will rise, filling ourselves up to the brim and the throat. And on our exhales, we release that breath, softening the throat, the chest, and the belly drops back down into the body, adding a gentle contraction at the bottom of that exhale to push the air all the way out. Remember, we never force or strain the breath, but if we spend some time with it, it will grow and develop on its own. We can also try to find that even equal Samavritti pranayama by mentally counting the breath on the inhale to whatever number we're filling ourselves up to today. And on the exhale, breathing that same number back out. Let's spend another few moments with this breath, and I'm going to share another passage from Awakening the Spine by Vonda Scarabelli. It says, the human spine is capable of growing in both directions, just like a plant. At the end of the day, most people are shorter than in the morning due to the cartilage compression during the day. The asanas help to extend the space between the vertebrae, relieving thus the stress to the spinal cord accumulating during the day's activities. The function of the body is to collect energy from the ground. By grasping the gravity of the earth, we become connected to the soil, from which also plants and trees receive their nourishment. The other part is given by air, water, and the sun. The function of the spine is to elongate. And in this elongation, its elasticity and youth are regained. It is not a battle against old age, but rather a bringing back to life of those parts in the body that have been neglected for so long and have lost their suppleness. We have lost contact with our bodies, and reestablishing this connection is what we try to do. The body should respond immediately to the requests of the mind. The less the gap between the two, the more efficient the action will be. There is no age limit. One can start yoga when 70 or 80 years old, and no damage will occur if the movements originate from the spine. People feel elated, and it gives them comfort and encouragement to discover that it is possible for them to control and modify their bodies. So we'll take just a couple more deep breaths here. Maybe allowing this breath to go by a count or two more on both the inhale and exhale. And then one more nice big breath. And on this breath, we'll let go of the count, and we'll simply just try to take our biggest breath of our morning yet without strain or discomfort, but putting some intention into it. So inhaling, inhaling, inhaling as much air as we possibly can. Same thing on the exhale. When we get there, slowly start to release the breath from the body. Taking a little bit more time here to really try to get every last drop out. At the bottom of that exhale, we will let go of following and controlling the breath here for a moment. Feel the connections with the body and the floor and the ground below it. Feel the support from the floor and the ground below it. Now we'll start to gradually bring our body back to life. So any small movements to begin. A wiggle of the toes, the fingertips, a rock of the head side to side. Depending where our arms are, we might now continue to stretch the arms overhead into a long body stretch. You can hold on to an opposite wrist or fingertips, or simply stretch your fingertips to the opposite side of the room. The legs can start to stretch out, maybe floating one foot up at a time, point and flex those feet. Start to feel this elongation originating from the spine and then moving out in both directions, upwards through the upper half of the body to the fingertips overhead, and downwards through the legs into the feet and toes. One more big breath in. And on the exhale, let's float our arms back down beside the body. Step our feet in so we're all working with a little bit different support. What I'd like us to try to do is reach down or use your feet to slide the props out from underneath the legs. If we need to roll to one side for a moment, or if we're able to reach behind us and just slide our blanket out, we'll remove our support from behind our back. So do it safely, do it mindfully. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. Just make sure you're being careful. And we'll end up back on our backs here. Let's start by walking those feet in towards the buttocks, draw the belly in, and then we're gonna hug our knees in. Rock a little bit here side to side to give that low back a stretch and a massage. Let's open the knees wide. Reach the hands between the legs. Maybe the big toes touch, maybe the inner edge of the feet. Maybe some of us are able to get the 3 points of the soles of the feet to touch. Wherever we're at, we're just guiding those feet towards one another, heels towards the pubic bone, Supta Baddha Konasana. The elbows might work as a little bit of leverage to open the thigh bones out away from the body. Make sure that the low back stays grounded and the spine remains in a neutral position. Continue to hold onto the toes or the feet. We'll take the soles of the feet to face the ceiling into happy baby pose. Let those knees drop out nice and wide. Here, another little rocking movement side to side across the back. Holding around the outer thighs is also an option if reaching up to the feet is a little much this morning. And then let's move the hands to those outer thighs and reach the feet out into a V. So now we're moving into Supta Konasana with the support of the hands on the outer thighs, elbows to the ground. Roll the ankles a few times here. Do try to press out through the heels to give those legs a bigger stretch. If you're ready, the hands may move to the inner thighs to massage up and down those muscles. Gravity will help stretch that area of our body here. The breath is moving in and out through the nose at a nice smooth rhythm. Face should be relaxed. Take a nice deep breath in. Now on the exhale, with the help of the hands, squeeze your legs all the way up to the ceiling in waterfall pose, and we'll pause here. Hold the backs of the thighs for support. Point and flex the feet a couple times. Give those hamstring muscles back there a vigorous massage up and down the backs of the thighs. My knees are still at a pretty significant bend from where I can normally be towards the end of the day or after more yoga. And if you're finding that that's the case for you too, that's fine. It takes the body some time to lengthen and elongate like we just read about. Now we're going to take a hold of our right thigh and lower our left leg towards the ground. Use your core, draw the belly in, try to slowly lower it to the ground. If you'd like this to be a strengthening and stability exercise, you may hover your left leg a couple inches from the floor. If you're in my camp today where I need a lot more flexibility and stretching, I'll bring my left leg all the way down to the ground. Low back is supported. We're going to give our right side a little TLC, so continue that vigorous massage into those muscles. Even try to make a little friction and heat back there behind the thigh. Even the space behind the knee, if you can reach up into that attachment in the calf muscle. The feet may be pointed or flexed. Just find a position for them, have some awareness there. Let's try to reach up a little bit higher, maybe towards that calf muscle. If it's okay in the neck and shoulders, we'll float the head up as if we were trying to draw the nose towards our knee. Good. Be mindful of where your left leg is. More work to hover it. If it's anchored, press it into the ground. We'll take another nice deep breath in. Keep the leg where it is on the exhale, lower the head back down to the ground. Now either bend the left knee, sliding the foot into the body first, or you may try to use your core to pull the left leg back up to meet the right. Pause and waterfall for a moment. Make sure we get our alignment back. And then we'll take a hold of the left leg with control. Use the abdominal muscles. Lower the right leg towards the ground. Again, you will choose whether you want the stability and strengthening out of this pose. Maybe you do a little bit of both. Maybe you start off with a hover, feel those muscles wake up a little bit more, and then maybe you bring it down to the ground into a stretch. I'm going to anchor my right leg immediately to the ground so I can concentrate on just stretching my muscles this morning. Let's give that left side a little massage, some TLC. Try to wake that area of our body up. Behind the knee, maybe into that attachment in the upper calf. Point and flex the feet, find a position in the feet to hold. To deepen the stretch, reach up a little bit higher to the calf muscle, float the head up, guiding that knee as if you're trying to touch your nose. Be mindful of where the right leg is. Take a deep breath in. And on the exhale, keep the leg where it is, lower the head back down. Either slide the right foot in towards the buttock first and then pull the knee and foot up, or try to use the strength of the core to lift the right leg back up to waterfall pose. We'll meet here, waterfall pose. Both legs reaching up to the ceiling. And then we're going to bring our feet down to the floor. Those of us that have yoga blocks, slide one towards you or carefully reach for it. We're going to take the yoga block on its shortest setting and place it between our inner thighs. So what we'll work to now is a flowing bridge pose set to Bandhasan to start to gradually open up the area around our hips, now toning and strengthening that backside and stretching the front. So our feet should be parallel to each other, heels drawing in towards those sit bones, shoulder blades are tucked under. Find one spot on the ceiling to maintain our drishti. Squeeze the block, tighten up the glutes and the hamstrings, and on the inhale, we'll float those hips up towards the ceiling. Now, this might be a very micro movement in our body, and that's fine. On the exhale, lower back down. So give your body some time to move into the pose, to figure the pose out. Inhaling, hips up. Exhale to lower. If we do start to reach up a little bit higher through the hips, remember the weight should translate into the meaty part of the shoulders, not the neck. It's okay if the chest starts to lift up and moves towards the chin, but we want to avoid collapsing the throat and dropping the chin to the chest. The neck should be arching up from the floor. Option to add the arm movements on the inhales. The arms will reach up to the ceiling and all the way overhead. On the exhales, as we lower the hips, the arms will float back down beside the body. Good, nice choices. Follow that breath and allow that breath to move like a wave. Let's take 2 more rounds, flowing bridge pose. We'll meet on our exhale when we get there, arms down, lower body down. Take the block, place it off to the side. Rock the knees side to side a couple times. One more pose here to get a little bit into the hip area and the low back area. The knees will remain bent up to the ceiling, but open your feet wider than your hips, almost as wide as the long edges of your yoga mat. So you might even bring the soles of the feet until you feel the edge of the yoga mat running up through the centers of the feet. Cactus those arms one more time from the shoulders, dropping the elbows out, backs of the hands towards the floor. Windshield wiper pose, we will flow with the breath side to side, and then we'll eventually pause for a little bit longer on each side. But let's loosen things up first. Take a nice deep breath in. On the exhale, let those knees fall to the right-hand side. They will not be stacked. They'll be like the windshield wipers of the car. Your left side will peel up away from the floor, and we will feel this all the way for some of us from the left knee up the quad, through the hip flexor, the waist, the side body. Keep the left shoulder down. The head can turn to the left. Inhale, the head and the knees move up through neutral. Exhale, knees fall to the left. Head turns to the right. Right side lifts up from the floor. We'll feel this all the way up through the right quad, hip, side body. Keep the shoulder grounded. Follow your own rhythm. Inhaling up through neutral. Exhaling, taking it back to the other side. Gentle back bending, twisting, and hip flexor stretching. On the exhales, you can encourage those knees a little closer to the ground by using your muscles. If you feel any discomfort around the knee joints, back off. Let's take it one more time to each side. And then the next time your knees end up on the right-hand side, we will pause for a few extra breaths. So the knees are falling off to the right. The left side is getting the big stretch. Head is turned to the left. Relax the shoulders. So we're just allowing gravity now to have a little bit more time to stretch the body out. If your left knee is fairly close to the ground, even if you can't see what it's doing down there, you might be able to notice that. You may pick up your right foot and place it on top of the left thigh, giving yourself a self-adjustment. If it does not feel comfortable for whatever reason, don't do it. I'm not doing that today. It's a little too much for me. I'm just going to let gravity traction me up here. One more breath on this side. If you have the foot on the thigh, we need to bring it back down to the floor first. And then inhale, head and knees back up to center. If you feel like that self-adjustment brought you out of alignment in your low back for whatever reason, you can readjust the low back before you do the other side. Then we'll let the knees fall to the left. Sink the shoulders into the ground, head turns to the right. Take several deep breaths on this side, either just allowing our friend gravity to help stretch everything out, or pick up your left foot, place it on that outer right thigh, and the weight of the left leg is going to take you further into the pose. And one more breath on this side. If the foot is on the thigh, take it to the ground first, and then we'll inhale the head and the knees back up to neutral. Feel like you need a little scooch in the low back to realign, do so. Pull the belly in, draw the knees in. Hug your knees back in towards the body. Float the head up towards the knees for a little bit more stretch for the back. And then we'll bring the head down, right arm beside the head. Let's roll onto our side in our fetal position. Pause. Head rests on the arms. Take that top hand to the floor. Face the heart towards the ground. The top leg can extend forward and slowly bring our bodies up to a seat. All right, so we did a lot of movement on our backs. We'll do a few more minutes for our spine here in our seated position. So we'll elevate those sit bones as much as we need to keep our spine in its neutral position. Sukhasana, our easy cross pose, Siddhasana, heel to heel, or any other position in the legs. Support the knees from underneath as needed. Find those sit bones, moving any flesh out of the way. Adjust those waistbands so the belly can breathe. Gently pull in through that low belly. Sit up nice and tall through the crown of the head. And then as we're ready, we'll float our fingertips out beside the body. We'll turn our palms up to the ceiling. Take another nice deep breath. And this time, remember that wingspan. Really try to reach out to the sides of the room, create space all the way up to the ceiling. Turn the palms back out. Exhale, reach it back down. Going right into our lateral movement, seated triangle pose. Keep the sit bones equally rooted. Right arm reaches up as we breathe in. Keep this length. Exhale, slide along an invisible wall to our left. We should feel that stretch through the waist and the rib cage. Our inhale will pull us up through center. Switching arms. Exhale, lean it to the right. One more time to each side, follow that breath. You might take your gaze downwards to that bottom hand if you have a little tightness through the back of the neck, or maybe try to look upwards. We'll meet in the center once we've balanced ourselves up, both hands reaching up. Bring those palms to touch and exhale the hands to the heart. Cross-legged people, let's try to switch up the cross of our legs, opposite foot in front. Sit up nice and tall. Our flowing spinal twist now with the breath. Inhale, arms up. Again, maintain this length. On the exhale, rotate around the axis of the spine to our right. Fingertips may reach towards the opposite knee. They might not find the ground behind us, especially if we're elevated. So don't put any weight in that back hand. Think about the rotation. Gaze over that back shoulder, open the eyes wide. Inhale, draw the body all the way back up to center. Still maintaining this length. Exhale, rotate to the left. Chin and shoulders stay parallel to the floor. Eyes open wide, peek behind the shoulder. One more time to each side. Inhaling up. Exhale, nice big twist to our right. Inhale up. And a nice big twist to the left. Next breath in brings us back to center where we'll meet. Palms touch. Exhale, hands to heart. So I'll make another transition into our tabletop, however you want to get there. You can walk forward over those legs. You can stretch your legs out. I'll give us another moment to get organized. Remember, we want to set up a nice, strong foundation. So we want to create as much space as we can between our fingertips. The hand should be as broad as the shoulders. Pressing into the ground, making that connection with the ground below us. Stacking those knees right underneath the hips. Toes may be tucked or pointed. Feels good to stretch my feet out this morning, so I'm going to keep my toes under. Following that wave-like breath and creating a ripple-like effect up the spine, we'll take a couple rounds of our cat-cows. The inhale relaxes the belly. Elongate the spine from the tailbone to the crown of the head, gazing forward. The exhale draws the belly in, rounding the back, tailbone tucking under, poofing up the back of the heart, drishti to the belly button. Follow the breath. If we notice that our body wants a little bit more of one of these for whatever reason, hang out there a little longer. Take an extra breath or two. Add any other natural movements that help the body wake up this morning. And then let's come back to a neutral position and give those hips and low back another stretch in our child's pose. Touch the toes together. We'll open those knees nice and wide, drawing the sit bones back to the heels. If you modify your child's pose, use props behind you to sit on, behind the knees, hips stay elevated. More active version, continue to walk the fingertips to the front corners of the yoga mat, and then try to bow the belly, the heart, and the head to the ground. If that head doesn't touch, use a prop. Again, normally my head doesn't have a problem, but I'm real tight this morning, so I'm gonna add a yoga block under my forehead and even stack my forearms underneath my shoulders so that my back has more support. But after a couple breaths, those muscles are gonna start to stretch and open up, and we'll be able to readjust. Continue to feel that movement in the body, lower half of the body, making that connection and sinking towards the ground. And even though our upper half of the body is connected to the ground, let that elongation continue to happen from that lower part of the spine. Create space through the vertebra. One more breath here. Our next inhale, we'll float the head up. We'll press into our hands, forearms, and elbows to bring the body up. And then restack those knees underneath the hips. Tuck those toes under. Walk those hands about one hand's distance forward. Draw the low belly in, and we're gonna move into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. So we'll float our hips up, shifting the weight back down to those legs. Fingers are spread wide, hands should be as wide as the shoulders, rooting into that mounted index finger and thumb, but rolling the head of those arm bones open away from the ears. Have a look at those feet, try to get them as symmetrical as possible. Bend the knees more deeply to help the back. And then take your dog for a walk if you have a lot of tightness this morning up the backs of those legs. So sinking one heel to the ground and bending the opposite knee. And then let's find a little stillness in this pose. So we'll just allow that energy to travel down the backs of the legs, concentrate on that space behind the knees. Let the heart draw towards the thighs. One more breath. Inhale, looks forward. Baby stepping, hands to feet, feet to hands. My modifiers, we bend our knees, placing weight of elbows or hands on our thighs. Those that want to stay in a deeper Uttanasana, grab the opposite elbows to ragdoll to help the elbows, shoulders, and head release. Our legs should be strong. making that connection with the ground. Start thinking about those lower bandhas, the pelvic floor muscles, slightly squeezing and lifting up into the body when the perineum. Uddiyana bandha, just below the navel center. Give those muscles some squeezing action, lifting into the body. Good, nice choices. We're all gonna roll up like a wave in our body today. Bend the knees, place the hands on the thighs with the fingertips turned in. Chin to chest, inhale, strong legs and core. Round up, one vertebra at a time. Inhale, breathing, the head should be the very last thing that comes up. Gazing forward, let the shoulders fall away from the ears, let the arms float out beside the body, coming right into Tadasana this morning. So the feet should still be parallel to each other. You can have a look down there, make sure they're where you think they are. Have a lift of those toes so we can feel energetically those four corners of the feet connecting to the ground. Knees are unlocked, we draw the thighs up. We pull that front body towards the back body. We let the heart be open. If we want a little bit more, turn the palms forward. Feel that rotation in the arm bone up into the shoulder socket. And let the head just float on top of the shoulders. And now moving right into our palm tree balancing pose. Inhale, reach out through that wingspan to the sides of the room, up to the ceiling. The heels are gonna lift up. And then the palms touch. And on the exhale, we try to slowly lower the heels and the hands to our heart. Again, inhale, big circle down, out and around, big stretch. And exhale. Let's do one more round. And we'll meet on the exhale with the heels down and hands to heart. So we're gonna practice some standing and maybe some kneeling lunges at this point to continue to open up the front of the hips here. And the kneeling option, it's maybe sometimes a little bit easier for people to balance and to get a deeper stretch, but it can be a little harder on our knees. So either one will be an option, and I'll kind of go over that with us. We will want to make our way to the front of the mat. Some of us, if we have 2 yoga blocks, we might want to have those nearby as well if we get to the kneeling portion towards the ground. But if you don't have yoga blocks, we are going to try to do Utana today. I can't remember if I'm saying that right. Utana, lizard pose. It's an interesting hip pose. You're probably going to want some props for that. So we'll stand tall towards the front of our mat. Blocks or props nearby in Tadasana. We'll start with the standing lunge. So I want us to take a big breath in first, reaching out and up. On the exhale, sweep those arms back down, but bring them onto our hips. We want our hips to remain level and steady and square the whole time. Now the right foot is going to take a big step back, straight from the hips. So I want to take a nice long step back in the right foot. Widen your stance if you're really off balance. We have options here too. You may stay in a high lunge, meaning I'm buoyant and bouncing on the ball of my back foot. This will be more of a balancing pose. If you would like to anchor the right heel down and in to more of a warrior one, Virabhadrasana pose, you're welcome. So you'd be high lunge, more balancing, a little bit more buoyancy, activity going on, more rooted and grounded. Wherever we are, right hip should be angling forward to the front corner of the mat. Left knee should be stacked over the left ankle. It's important not to hyperextend the low back here and overarch. So pull that low belly in, lower buttock rooting towards the ground. Heart should be lifted, spine is elongating. I really want us to concentrate on the front of the right hip. This is where we're trying to open up and create space to the front of the right hip. And the way we can do that is by getting a little bit more posterior tilt in our pelvis. So with our hands on our hips, we just try to tuck it under a little bit further, tailbone under. You can really start to feel a pull through that front hip. Shrug the shoulders from the ears. We want to create some more space here in the shoulder blades. Reach those fingertips forward from the hips towards the ceiling. We might open them fairly wide or bend at the elbows so that not creating more tension in the neck and shoulders. So we're holding high lunge or variation of Virabhadrasana 1. The gaze may move upwards towards the ceiling. Action is trying to tuck that tailbone under to open up the front of the right hip. One more breath. On the inhale, look forward. Exhale, hands come back down to those hips. Step forward. Float those arms out. Equalize the weight in both feet and just kind of take some inventory here, observing. Palms turn out. Inhale, reach out and up. Exhale, arms come all the way back out and down to the hips. Hips are level and square to the front corners of our mat. Big step back with the left foot. Widen your stance, meaning create more space between the feet if you feel really off balance. Right knee over ankle, left hip forward, right hip back square. High lunge, balancing on the ball of the back foot, or turning that back heel in and down, about 15 degrees or so. It's important that you're not rolling to the instep of the foot if you're in more Virabhadrasana 1, but you have the four corners of the feet anchored. Anchor that lower buttock to the floor, strong core pulling in. Action, hands on hips, tuck that pelvis under even more. Really push the tailbone forward. We should feel a big stretch here in the front of the left hip. Action, posterior tilt, open the hip crease. Even more length through the upper body. Fingertips reach forward from the hips overhead. Make sure you're not tensing the upper shoulders. So arms may stay fairly wide or just bend at the elbows slightly to give the neck some space. Breathing in and out through the nose. Gaze may move slightly upwards. One more breath. Inhale, look forward. Exhale, step forward. Arms float down beside the body, Tadasana. Pause for a moment. Try to equalize the weight through both feet. Inhale, reach up. Big stretch. Exhale, arms come back around and back to those hips. Right foot steps back. Long stance. High lunge. We're going to stay in high lunge today. You can ground back in the heel if you're modifying. This is the option where we're going to lower down to our right knee. If that's too much, stay in the upward version. You will repeat the pose we just took. Okay, good. So some of you are choosing to stay upright. Your focus is still the same as we just had. Those of us coming down to the knee, you can add extra cushion underneath that knee by turning the mat under. If it helps with your balance, and the blocks can come under the shoulders. Toes tucked or pointed, same action. You can bring the hands onto that front thigh, pushing the right hip forward, still focusing here. Pull the low belly in, add the arms if you want it. So we're now in a kneeling low lunge, but we're still receiving that big stretch up the front of the thigh. Back and neck should be long, couple breaths. Those who come down to the ground, hands to thighs, back toes under. What we'll try to do is float the back knee back up. If that's a little bit much for you today, use your hands. You can step your foot forward into a forward fold. Moving back up to high lunge. We took the elevator down, we're bringing it back up. Look forward, step back forward, arms float down, mountain pose. Let's check in, see where we're at. Other side, inhale, reach it up. Exhale, hands to hips, hips stay square. Repeat, left foot, big stance. High lunge, belly in, tailbone rooted, pushing left hip forward, right knee over ankle, choosing to stay here today, or we can try to lower down to that left knee. If we've lowered down onto our left knee, we can take our hands to our front thigh or use our yoga blocks for a little bit of support. We're still pushing that left hip forward, and it's just the action in the pelvis that's really going to intensify the stretch up the front of the quad and the hip. Adding arms if we want. Couple breaths here. If you're staying upright, same action in the pelvis, big stretch through the thigh. One more breath. Those of us that came down, you can bring your hands back to your thigh, back toes are tucked, push off that front foot to try to lift back up a little bit to your high lunge. Look forward, step forward, arms float down, mountain pose. Take some inventory. Again, inhale, reach up, big stretch. This time, bring the palms together and exhale, hands to heart. So this lizard pose position, we're gonna try to step back into it and lower down to the ground. If that doesn't work for you, you can come down to the ground, whoever it's easiest for you, and then place your front foot into position. So if what we just did was a little straining on the hips of the knees, please modify. That part doesn't matter, we just wanna get there safely. So from here, again, just take a breath, create some space, inhale, exhale, hands onto those hips. Right foot steps back, nice big lunge. Widen your stance a little bit this time. We're in high lunge. Left knee over ankle, low belly in. Again, slowly, hands can come to that front thigh. We're gonna try to slowly come down onto our back knee. Now there is a version of lizard pose where that back leg, the knee will come back up, and I'll show it to you if you want it. So from here, we will bring our blocks into play, and I would start with them on their high setting. And we're gonna walk our left foot out to the long edge of our yoga mat and bring both hands onto our props to the inside of the left knee. Okay, so that's where we should be right now. Both blocks or books, whatever we're using for props here. You can take some weight into your hands to start. Hips should be equal. And try to take your back foot, which is your right foot and knee, slightly further back. This knee stays above the ankle, but you'll notice we're bringing this back leg at a more 45-degree angle. This can get pretty intense pretty quickly. You're allowed to have weight in your hands. We'll eventually maybe even bring weight into our forearms. So lots of versions of this. If you are able to bring your yoga blocks down already at this point and bring your forearms onto your yoga blocks, you may do so. Or if your hands reach the floor, you may do so. So let me go through all of our options and we'll kind of see where we're at. First option with this left foot is to simply take your toes and turn them out 45 degrees. Now the action is pushing the hips forward. Gravity is pulling us down, but just don't totally collapse into the pose. Try to have some energy around the hips. This is a really big hip opener, but hopefully we move into it gradually, as Kathy said. Another option is to roll to the lateral edge of the left foot and let the left knee fall away from the body. So I'm allowing my left knee to open out. If you still don't feel anything, your hands need to be secure. So if you want to bring that back knee up, you cannot have your hands on your yoga blocks unless your yoga blocks are on their flat setting, because you don't want your hands to fall off the block. So that's first things first. Some people like to have the back knee up. It's a more powerful version of the pose, and it takes the pressure off the knee. For me, I like to keep my back knee down. But at this point, I'm going to try to bring my forearms onto my yoga blocks. Left knee opening, outer edge of the foot. That doesn't feel good to you, go back to where we started. We're just going to try to take 2 more breaths on this side. Relax the face. Don't let the jaw do the work. Now to come up, especially those of us that have gone further into it, elbow, elbow, hand, hand. Walk your left foot in. Bring your left hand back out. So you're more of a neutral position. So your hands are framing your left foot. Tuck your back toes under, float that heel up. From here, let's transition a little differently today, and I'm gonna give you another option. If your back knee is up and you have the space, you may step your left foot back to meet your right and walk it out in downward facing dog. If that's a really big movement for us, come back down to that knee and simply try to help your left foot back to a tabletop instead of to go back up through that high lunge. That seems like a lot for me today even, so we'll just forego that. So we should either end up in a tabletop where we can do a couple cat-cows, or downward facing dog where we're pedaling our heels, getting the blood flow back through those legs. So we'll just approach it a little differently from this side. So moving into the other side, again, if you have the space, you may lift your right foot up behind you and step it forward into that lunge. I am unable to do that in my practice anymore. So I'm going to come down to my knees, bring my hand behind my right thigh, and safely place my right foot forward. Take those props on their high setting. So we should be where we started on the first side. We just stepped forward instead of lowering down from high lunge. Now we need to walk our right foot out to the long edge of the yoga mat and bring both of our props to the inside of the right foot. So our hands are still underneath our shoulders. The right foot will walk out almost to the long edge of the mat here. If it's too much on the knees and you do want to elevate that back knee, your blocks must be on the low setting so that they're not wobbly. And then you can hover your knee from the floor and be into this version of a low lunge. The rest of us on our knee do try to take the knee back a little bit further. Right knee is still over ankle, but now our back thigh is more at a 45-degree angle. Action is hips drawing forward, not necessarily just collapsing down into them. First version is just to take the toes of the right foot and turn them out, almost off the long edge of the yoga mat. Another option is to roll to the lateral edge of the right foot and let the right knee fall open. Hips moving forward. I feel this on both of my hips. Majority of people will feel this more in the right hip. Just kind of depends how we hold our tension. If we have the ability, this is my tighter side. I don't know if I'll be able to go as far into it on the side. Use that exhale to try to exhale away any tension, tightness that we are finding. One more breath. And we'll gradually bring ourselves up out of the pose, elbow, elbow, hand, hand. We'll want to walk the right foot back in and take our right hand to the outside of the right foot. So both hands are framing that front foot. First option, toes tuck under, back knee lifts, stepping back into down dog. That seems like a big movement. Keep the knee down. Use your props to create some space and just carefully slide your right foot back to meet the left. And we can be in a tabletop and then go from there. Good. So once we're in a neutral position, you can take your dog for a walk a couple times, cat cow. And then we're all gonna meet in child's pose. Dropping the body all the way back down to the ground, bowing the head to the ground. Hands can sleep back to the feet. Pausing here for a moment. Hands under the shoulders, tuck the chin. Inhale, let's round on up. From our seated position, rock over to either hip, it doesn't matter, and step those feet forward. So it's time to come on to our backs. I was gonna have us do one more front hip area opening, and that is Salamba Setu Bandhasan or supported bridge pose. So you'll either wanna have a yoga block or a firm prop that you're gonna be placing underneath your low back. Closer to the ground, a little bit more subtle. Higher up it is, the more extreme you're going to be in. We'll go down to our back and then place the prop underneath there. And this could actually be our final relaxation pose, but anytime you can slide this out and add any other props underneath the legs. But I'll guide us through all this, so don't worry. Roll to one side and walk yourself down safely to your back, or doing our slow roll down. Soles of the feet grounded, knees open, fingertips reach forward, and we pull the belly in strongly to roll down through the back. Once we're all on our back, take a moment to readjust the clothing, any ponytails, stretch the body out all the way. So feet are stretching towards the front of the mat, arms overhead. We want to create that space through all the joints of the body, especially the vertebra. On the exhale, we'll float those arms down, tuck the shoulder blades under. Step the feet in. If we need to give a hug of knees into our body before we go into it, do so. And then the feet are close to the sit bones, parallel to each other. We did this pose already today in a flowing manner. Now we're going to use it as a restorative pose. Shoulder blades tuck under. Squeeze the hamstrings in the buttock to lift the hips up. The prop that we're using goes under the sacrum. So the lowest part, flat part of the back. That's not in the curve of the lumbar spine. You'll probably have a little bit of flesh hanging over that front edge of your prop, and that's okay. But the whole weight of the hips and the pelvis should be supported. That's going to be important to remember our alignment through the knees to toes. So keep those knees pointing straight towards the toes. And that the weight is being weighted into the shoulders and not the neck. Arms may be rolling open besides the body, palms up, fingertips curling in naturally. A little bit more, cactus those arms back out from the shoulders. If we want even more opening and maybe a way to let the body absorb this pose even more,
would be Purna Sattu Bandhasan, and that's a stretch out through both legs. Test the waters one leg at a time. If that feels okay, you can extend both legs forward. You want to be a little bit mindful of the knees. I like to keep the feet active, pointing up towards the ceiling. Little energy up through the thighs so the knees aren't just collapsing. But we should feel a big stretch across the front of those hips, through the abdominal wall. This is a nice, gentle inversion. Heart is just slightly higher than the head. At this point, we'll close the eyes and allow the body to absorb this pose. So this is where we will be to absorb the rest of our practice as well. If this is not comfortable for the body today, step the feet in, slide the prop out, and readjust so that the body is perfectly comfortable and supported wherever it needs to be today. And we'll start to relax the whole body from the crown of the head all the way down to the fingertips and toes. Let go of any expression across the face. Smooth the forehead, the brow, the eyebrow center. Feel the weight of the arms and the legs. Notice a subtle rise and fall of the belly with the breath, or the gentle air touching around the nostrils, the tip of the nose. Allow the whole body to relax. So try to take one more complete breath from this position. Those of us that continued and supported bridge pose, very carefully step your feet back in, 1 foot at a time. Pause for a moment. Bring the arms back down beside the body, pressing down through the upper arms and elbows. Tighten up the buttocks and the hamstrings. Press into the ground through the feet, the backs of the arms, and hover just enough to slide the prop out from underneath our low back. Allow that back to sink slowly all the way back down to the ground and pause. Draw the belly in, pulling the knees one at a time towards the body. Again, move very slowly. This is a counter stretch for that opening. Draw the knees in, gentle rock here side to side. If you'd like to float the head up one more time, nose towards the knees, to give that back a little bit more of a stretch, go ahead and do so. And then relax the head back down to the ground. Bring one arm beside the head and we'll roll off to our side, pausing in Supta Balasana, sleeping baby pose for a moment. Try to keep those eyes soft or closed. Press into the ground. Turn the heart towards the floor and slowly bring the body up. We will meet in any comfortable seated position. If you'd like to slide a little support underneath those sit bones, go ahead and do so. Take your time here. Just move nice and mindfully for the body. We want to find those sit bones, move any flesh out of the way. Any position in the legs that is comfortable and allows us to find our tallest seat and length through our spine. And we have a little bit of time left just to do a few rounds of our Nadi Shodhanam before we finish up our practice today. So I'll guide us through a couple rounds and then we'll take another 1 or 2 rounds just to kind of bring that practice back into our bodies. Sit up tall through the crown of the head. Take chin mudra in the hands, index finger to thumb. Place the hands back down on the knees, palms up generally for this practice. In the right hand, we make Nasagra mudra. It starts by making the peace sign, and then you bring the index finger and middle fingers together. The thumb, ring, and pinky are the pinchers. That right hand turns towards the face, pressing the index finger, middle finger into that third eye center. Thumb rests gently on the outside of the right nostril, ring and pinky on the outside of the left nostril. To begin, we inhale through both nostrils. We exhale through both nostrils. We close the right nostril with the thumb and inhale just through the left. Close the left, open the right, and exhale. Inhale back through the right. Close the right, open the left, and exhale. That's 1 round. Inhale left. Close left, open right, exhale. Inhale back through the right. Close right, open left, exhale. That's 2 rounds. Continue at your own rhythm and pace for a couple more rounds.
Whatever round you're currently on, take the time to finish that round. We should finish our round with an exhale out the left nostril. When you get to that point, exhale completely out that left nostril. And then release the hands back down to the knees, keeping the eyes closed. Focus the mind's eye at that acupressure point at the third eye center, Agnya chakra. The breath will go wherever it wants to. Be mindful of the posture in the body, sitting up a little bit taller through the spine and the crown of the head. Feel the weight of the shoulders and elbows falling away from the ears. The gentle weight of the hands on the knees. Feel the lower half of the body connected with the floor, the props, and the ground below. And let the upper half of the body elongate and lengthen, creating space between each vertebra of the spine, all the way up to the top of the head. And then being mindful of our surroundings, we'll take just a couple more breaths together today. Reaching the arms out besides the body, palms up. Let's take another deep breath in. This time, reach those arms out wide and all the way up overhead, gathering up everything we need for the rest of our day. Turn those palms up. Exhale, float the arms all the way back down to the ground, letting go of all that other junk we don't need today. And then one more time, inhale those arms up, big stretch. Bring the palms together. Exhale the hands to the heart. Humbly bow the head down to the heart to honor and thank ourselves, our bodies, each other, and anyone else who continues to make it possible for us to come together and practice our yoga together. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om, Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om, Tat Sat.